All right, in that case, we'll now proceed to group 8. Who would come forward from group 8 to make a presentation?
Hello.
Hello, yes. You can introduce yourself and your group partners.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'll turn my video off so you get better bandwidth. Yes.
Okay, sir. So myself, Professor Shashikant Sare from Cummins College of Engineering, Pune. My group partners are Professor Namrata Pai, she is from Manipal Institute of Technology, and Professor Amit Jadhav from Anna Saheb Dange College of Engineering, Asta, and Professor Sagar Khedkar from Walchal College of Engineering. But from yesterday, this two last group mate, they haven't joined. So we'll be presenting, we have prepared the presentation, myself and Namrata madam.
Okay, very good.
Okay. So this is just a formal presentation I have made. Just write all the mathematical equation and whatever I understand, take a snapshot and paste on a PPTs. So I will start with the simple definition of the unit function. So unit function is nothing but is having a very narrow width and a very large height. So if we can visualize this unit impulse function. So it shows that there is a rectangle shape pulse which having a width of delta and the height of 1 by delta t. Now if the width of this pulse, that is delta, tends to 0, then the width is approximately 0 and height goes to the infinity. So we can define unit impulse function as it is having an infinite amplitude and present at time t equal to 0, whose width is approximately 0. Right? Okay. So if I want to find the area of this unit impulse function, simply I have to do the multiplication of width with the height. So if we see this mathematical equation, area is nothing but width into height. So width is the delta and the height is the 1 by delta. So it gives me 1. So it shows that unit function. So it shows that impulse function having area of unity. Now one more thing I will like to add here, unit impulse function or unit signal is sometimes also called standard test signal. So why it is standard test signal? Just let us consider a system. So in a discrete math, so in signals and system, we usually represent a system by a rectangle block, which has some input del of t and some output by y of t. Here this S represent a simple system. So whenever I apply input, the signal is del t, that is the impulse function. Obviously, I will get the output h of t. So h of t, we call this as an impulse response. Now, why the name is given impulse response? Because del of t having huge amount of energy. So its amplitude is infinite. So whenever I get the infinite amplitude signal, I will get the output of a system which is nothing but the del of t. H of t. So h of t we call as the impulse response. Now second thing, just I told earlier, so impulse signal or impulse function is also called a standard test signal. Now let us consider having a system, but what is the property of, what is the characteristic of the system or what is inside this system, I don't know. Now if I want to know this, what is hidden inside this system, I have to give a impulse. Right? So just we have seen that impulse having a very high amount of infinite amount of amplitude. So whenever I give this del of t to this system, the system will give me output h of t. So output h of t is nothing but the system characteristic. Right? So this thing can be easily correlated with day-to-day life. Usually I used to give one or two example on this. So one is the example is a lie detector. Now we know that criminals never speak true. So what is hidden inside them? So for that we use a lie detector. So how lie detector works? So we give some sedative we give some drugs to the criminal, and we keep on asking some questions. So when we keep on asking some question, these questions are nothing but like an impulse. We are giving some impulse to the criminals, and because of that impulse, they will whatever they say and what are the signal generated by the brain. So from that we'll come to know whether the patient is saying true or false, whether it is lying or saying true. So this is the one example. And second example, usually I used to give, if there are three person looks similar. Let us say Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Now we know that some words of the Japanese, some words of the Chinese, some word of the Korean. But they are never, this 3%, they are never saying that we are Chinese or Japanese. So we have a confusion. So how to find out who is Chinese, Japanese, or Korean? So we'll give some impulse. So what type of impulse we'll give? Just sir or explain. That will give a slap. So whenever they are at normal position, we'll give a slap. Or there is other way. Whenever these 3% are sleeping, we'll throw a extreme cold water on that. So whenever they wake up, obviously they will speak something. Some words will come out of from their mouth. So that word, obviously we know the first word in this case is our mother tongue, right? So this is nothing but how the impulse impulse function is also said to be standard state signal because of the properties of the impulse function we have seen. Now let's come to the one more property, important property of the impulse function, that is the additive property. Suppose, now if we see the second block, second figure, suppose if del of t is shifted by some time t1, now if this shifted del of t signal is given to the system will produce output R, which stand for the output response, which is nothing but del into t minus t1, right? So this shows that whatever the amount the input signal is shifted, obviously the output is also shifted by the same. Now I will apply one more signal that is said to be del t minus t2. Now this del t minus t1 and del t minus t2 both are added. So obviously at the output, I will get output as del t minus t1 plus del t minus t2. So this shows the impulse function also has the additive properties. Next property is the homogeneity property, or sometimes called a scaling property. So scaling property is a very simple. If input del of t is been multiplied by some scaling factor, let us say k is a scaling factor, or we'll say k is a constant. So it may be voltage or any value, right? So if I multiply del of t with the k, obviously the output response will be also multiplied by k. So this is the homogeneity property. It shows that output is equally multiplied by the whatever the scaling factor we apply at the input. Now we'll consider one more case. Now we know that whenever we shift the input by time t1, so obviously the output should also shift by the equal time t1. So this shows that the system is having a linear, having a shift invariant, is satisfied by the shift invariant property. Now what we'll do, in the next, I will apply one more signal. Sorry, we'll apply a two signal. So each first signal is the del of t minus t1 multiplied by some constant k1 plus del of t minus t2 multiplied by constant k2. So in output we'll get k1 multiplied by the impulse response which we get because of the del of t minus t1 plus k2 multiplied by impulse response what we get, which we get because of the del of t minus t2, that is h of t minus t2. So I can represent the output of a system in this way. So input is t1 into del of t minus t1 plus k2 into del of t minus t2, and the output response of the system is k1 into h of t minus t1 plus k2 into h of t minus t2. So this property shows that input is scaled and input is shifting. So output is obviously there is a scaling and shifting. So this shows that system is linear. So why the system is linear? Because if we see that is satisfy the superposition theorem. So superposition theorem is just like a in a network we know very well. So we apply a different voltage source, and the overall addition of the source V1 plus V2 plus V3 plus V4, whatever the voltage source we have, here we can say K1, K2, K3. So this source at the output will be nothing but summation of all the sources into the signal, right? So if the system satisfied the property, homogeneity property, then the system is, we can say it is a linear system. Now the important thing is why the system should be linear. If the system is linear, then the output of the system can be very well defined using mathematical tool. So that we call as a convolution. But if the system is non-linear, then it is very complicated to represent the output in terms of mathematics. So linear system, always easy to analyze, always easy to represent in a mathematical way. Okay, so because if this system is linear, we can do the analysis properly.
Okay, very good. Are you done, Professor Sahare?
Yes, sir.
Are you done with your presentation?
Yes, sir. This only 2 or 3 properties were there.
Yeah, you can now stop sharing them.
Okay, sir.
And yeah, so very interesting. But a few comments on the presentation. Very nicely presented. In fact, Professor Sahare also gave some very interesting examples. So you see, Professor Sahare explained the idea of bringing together. So you see, each impulse produces a response, and you bring these you bring these impulse responses together to form the overall response. That idea he was trying to explain. Now, one thing is, this is a consequence of linearity and not a cause. When you are explaining to the students, you must explain that this, what you explained in this lecture, is a consequence of linearity and not a cause, right? So this is not a cause of linearity, it's a consequence. So the idea of convolution, which you briefly mentioned there, is a consequence and not a cause of linearity, right? And in fact, it's a consequence of both linearity and shift invariance. So we are invoking both linearity and shift invariance. And Professor Shashikant rightly said that linearity and shift invariance simplify system analysis. So, if you can make a linear shift invariant approximation to a system situation, it simplifies the input-output analysis. Any further, observations on this presentation?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, does actually impulse response have any significance for an electrical circuit? Like how to give an impulse signal for an electrical
Yes, very good. That's a good question. There are two
circuit practically.
Yeah, practically. There are very good. There are two answers to this question. One answer is indirect. So very often, for example, for an RC circuit, in fact, I would be illustrating that in one of subsequent lectures, I think. In an RC circuit, it's more difficult to find out the impulse response directly. But you can find out the step response and differentiate it to get the impulse response. That is one answer. The other answer is, instead of an impulse, you apply a very sharp pulse, a very sharp and narrow pulse. So that you can practically apply, a narrow and a sharp pulse, and you can keep repeating that in a signal generator and apply it, say, to an RC circuit. You could see the response to a sharp pulse which would approximate the impulse response. Is that right, Professor Pai?
Okay. Sir, do we have any instrument which generate impulse response, or just we have to make a pulse width smaller?
Well, I think if you wish to get it directly, the best way to do it is to use a narrow pulse, a narrow periodic pulse generator.
Okay.
So you would have a narrow periodic pulse generator fed to your electrical circuit, and the output could be seen on a cathode ray oscilloscope, and you could stabilize it with the input so that you can see the impulse response, provided it dies down soon enough. If it doesn't die down soon enough, then no matter how long the period is between two pulses, it will not die down. So if you're sure that it dies down soon enough, then you can demonstrate the impulse response by using very repetitive narrow pulses. Okay. The other way, as I said, is use a step input. You could use a square wave step input, and you could differentiate that. So you could show the step response, and from it you can get the impulse response.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Very good. Very nice. Any other comments or observations on this presentation?
Sir, can I ask one question?
Yes, please do.
In radar also we send this pulse, no? So
yes,
that it can detect the object. So
yes.
it's the same thing, that square is integrated, and then the high power impulse is generated and that is sent. Is it like that?
So in a radar, we use pulses normally to track a target, isn't it? So what you do is, you keep sending pulses. So in a way, yes, there's an impulse response involved there. You're all the time sending pulses to the target and looking for the received pulse, isn't it?
Yes.
So in a way, the received pulse tells you about the target. And yes, in a way, that's an example of if the pulse is sharp, then it's an example of an impulse being transmitted. But in radar, we don't necessarily use narrow pulses. We could also use, slightly broader pulses, right? So it depends on the kind of pulse that you wish to use.
Yes. Okay. So dying out the pulses, does that depend on the width of the pulse?
Can you come again? Can you repeat the question?
If the pulse is wider, is there are there greater chances that it will die out fast? So is there any relationship between the width of the pulse and the distance it will cover?
That's a long subject, but see, there are different advantages. So let's take, for example, the merits and demerits of short pulses and what are called continuous wave pulses. There are certain advantages of using continuous waves.
Comb functions.
Pardon?
Comb function.
Comb functions are, again, they're still sharp pulses. Okay. People also use what are called FMCW radar, so frequency modulated continuous wave radar.
Yes.
So there are merits and demerits in both approaches. One is a pulsed kind of pattern, and one is a continuous wave kind of pattern. There are certain merits and demerits.
Okay.
If for example, if you use a sinusoid, a tone, then you can detect the Doppler, isn't it? And you're using a narrow bandwidth. But if you're using a pulse, you're using high bandwidth. There's a compromise between the time and frequency here.
Heisenberg.
Yes. So there is a compromise. So you see, when you use a sharp pulse, you're using more bandwidth. You assume that your, your channel has high bandwidth. But if you're using a narrow, if it's a sinusoid, then it lasts for a long time, but you're using less bandwidth. So it's a compromise. It's again a game between the time and frequency domains.
Okay.
At one level, that's one level of the answer. There are different aspects to it.
Okay. Thank
So
you,
there
sir.
is there's a question from Professor Narayan Marathe whether the rectangular pulse or triangular pattern is a better example to approach. Well, the question from Professor Narayan Marathe is, would you like a rectangular pulse to go to infinitesimal width? Would you like a triangular pulse to go to infinitesimal width to explain the idea of an impulse? Now, strictly speaking, both should work. But the only difference is, in the case of a triangular pulse, you see the original function itself as continuous. So you're taking a continuous function, you're starting to bring it down, narrow it down. So, frankly speaking, both of them should really bring you to the same answer. But how they behave in the spectral domain is different. So, perhaps for a first course on signals and systems, it's not very, there is no great difference. But when you start approximating the impulse, then it makes a big difference, whether you're using a rectangular or triangular pulse. Yes? Very good. So, any other comments or observations on this presentation? Okay, very nice. Yes, yes.
I think it is
Yes.
in pulse position modulation also we are using this.
Yes. Pulse position modulation also, but pulse position modulation
It's an indirect way of
is an
from
indirect
PWM.
way of, it's an indirect way of, so see that is, so in a way a pulse position modulation, so what you do in pulse position modulation is a version of frequency modulation.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a discrete version of frequency modulation. Yes. So that is, yeah. Okay, now we'll go on to group number 10. Is that right? And that will complete our first cycle of presentations.
9, sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 9. Yes. Group number 9. Yeah. Yeah, group number 9. Yes, Professor Yatisha.
So actually, from group number 9, Dr. Yatisha here.
Yes.
So our group details will be like this.
Yes.
Dr. S.M. Thandi from
Yes.
Walchand College of Engineering.
Yeah.
Sachin Raikar from Walchand College of Engineering. Sheshagiri from Danakula Institute of Engineering and Technology, Vijayawada.
Yeah.
And Nath K from ATME College of Engineering.
Yeah.
The group members are not available from yesterday, sir. Actually,
Okay.
only I am here.
Okay.
So,
That's very unfortunate. So, I would again urge the faculty from Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli, to register themselves properly for the workshop. Yes. So, yes. Now, yeah, please go on, Professor. Yeah.
okay, sir. My topic given as actually relating unit step and unit impulse.
Very good. Yes. So, in
So
fact, that
actually,
in some sense answers the
yes.
question which one of you raised. Yes. How do you get a unit impulse response in practice? Very
Yes.
good. Yeah. Okay.
So actually, I'm new to this signals and system. I'm not a teacher, but anyway, I just made one derivation with respect to how to the relation between unit step and unit impulse. I want to present now.
Yes.
So this is the relation between unit impulse and unit step signal here. So where the unit impulse is represented as del of t and unit step signal is represented as u of t. So now first we go through the unit impulse response. So just I will take the del of tau. The limits will be from minus infinity to plus infinity. This is the one of the waveform. I'm taking del of tau. If it is from minus infinity to plus infinity, then what will be the answer is 1. Then if I take minus infinity to t, so let us call some t is less than 0, whether it is in now t, then I will, the answers is 0. So for t less than 0, then if I integrate this same with respect to minus infinity to t, del of tau into d tau, but now I will assume t is greater than or equal to 0. In this case, the value of this integral minus infinity to t del of tau into d tau is 1. Then I will move on to the unit step definition. So we already, all of you are aware of this. U of t will be equal to 0 for t less than 0, 1 for t greater than or equal to 0. Then according to this definition, okay, we can write here integral of minus infinity to t del of tau d tau in terms of 1 or 0. I can directly write it as u of t. since your u of t is 0 for t less than 0 and 1 for t greater than or equal to 0. So from this, I can give a relation between impulse and step signal, like integral of minus infinity to, that is integral of del of t into dt is u of t. If I do the derivative for both left hand side and right hand side, then my answer will be del of t will be equal to d by dt u of t. This is the relation between the impulse and step signal. Sir, also we can relate with respect to the waveform also, but I have not done here, sir. So if any comments, you can give it, sir.
So now, very good, well tried, so Professor Yatisha. Now, any comments? So now, one important, so this is a very important foundation for further discussion, because here you're relating the unit step, which is a proper function, to the unit impulse, which is not really a function, right? So that's a very important step. Very nice. Any comments on this presentation? Yeah, you can stop sharing, Professor Yatisha.
Oh, okay, sir.
Very nice. So well presented. So any comments on this presentation? Any observations? So are there any observations that you have on this presentation? Anybody who has any observations? I think perhaps it will be a good idea to take the next presentation and then we can have some discussion. So we come to the last presentation of this cycle from group 10. Yeah, so I invite group 10. So who are the members of group 10? So it looks like group 10 is absent here. So anyway, group 10 was supposed to present an example. So we can do it later. Now let us start with the next cycle. Let's start with the next cycle. So let's have group 1 make its presentation for the next cycle now.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Good evening, all. On behalf of Group 1, I am presenting this topic, Discrete Independent Variable System or Discrete Time System. The group members are Pradhan Madam, Dr. Chandrakant Kaur sir, Ramchandra Reddy sir, myself Seema Diwan, and Lekha Das ma'am. Throughout these sessions, we have tried to define continuous systems. We have seen many examples of the continuous system. A simple example I am presenting here. This is the example of a ceiling fan, which is an electric motor basically. So when voltage is applied to this, the input to the system, so ceiling fan can be considered as a continuous time system, which is an electric motor. The input to the electric motor is electric voltage, which is a continuous time signal. The signal is processed and output is the mechanical energy that is provided. So basically, this system is a continuous time system. It is a shift invariant system. It's a linear system. This system is modeled as a RL circuit. All the components are linear one, and this is a linear system. So this is the example of a continuous time system. We will see now an example of a discrete time system, a biological system, a human being. So let us consider this example. If I am following a diet plan of Ms. Rujuta Divekar, I will be consuming the food 7 to 8 times a day. So food is the input which will be providing the energy to the system, which is a biological system. This energy is required for walking, running, to do the daily activities. But if I am following Dr. Dixit's diet plan, I will be consuming food only twice a day. So the input will be twice a day with a regular interval. In earlier case, in Rujuta Divekar's case, the input will be 7 to 8 times a day. So this input is not continuous. I am consuming food over a discrete interval. I am consuming a food with a defined interval of say 2 hours or interval of say 5 to 6 hours. So the stomach in the human being, it's a system which cannot process a continuous input. It can process a discrete input in terms of food. So this is an example of a discrete system, example of a real-time discrete system. Now, why? Another fact is that most of the systems that are present, they are continuous in nature. but the discretization of systems is required. Some systems are naturally discrete, or some signals are naturally discrete. For example, a temperature, when it is measured over time interval, say 1 hour, say 2 hour, if you are measuring a temperature over a certain interval, certain time period t, that is an example of a discrete signal. But most of the signals, for example, voltage measured over an independent variable time is a continuous time signal. Current measured over a independent variable time, again it is a continuous signal. Power is a continuous signal. Pressure is a continuous signal. So most of the signals that are present in the real time system, so real world signals are continuous in nature. But if you want to process this signal, the main reason of requiring a discrete system is that infinite number of physical resources. That means if I want to process a voltage signal, I am having a sensor, I'm sensing a voltage signal, and that voltage signal I want to be considered as the input in a computer. Computer is an example of a discrete time system. I would like to take that signal as the input. I want to realize certain control system. For that, I want to take this signal, the input signal, then if you consider in a continuous time signal, which is represented here, so in a very small interval, for example, in the interval of say 0.1 to magnitude changes from 0.1 to 0.2. So for example, here the magnitude is 0.1. And this interval is 0.1 seconds. So if you are measuring this signal over a very, very short interval, there are infinite number of magnitude variations that are seen in a continuous time signal. As Madam Nandita, which she has rightly pointed out, that infinite number of impulses are required. So for each time instant, for representing a magnitude, an impulse will be required. And in a real-time system, a real-world system, it is not possible to have infinite resources. Our resources are limited. Number of adders, number of subtractors, number of memory locations in the computers, they are limited. So therefore, we are working with a limited number of resources, and we cannot store infinite number of data samples. We can store finite number of data samples, though we cannot store infinite number of data samples. And therefore, it is a reasonable assumption to consider this magnitude variation over a discrete interval, which will give us a liberty to have a limited number of samples. So major reason here, as I am saying, as I have already mentioned, that 99% real world signals are continuous time, but the resources are limited. So this is the major reason that we need to discretize the signal. That is the need of the Nyquist theorem, which gives us the optimum sampling rate. We need to discretize the signal in terms of this discrete signal, so that a system like a computer, which is a discrete system, so to say, can process the signal. So this is the need of discretization of the signals, so that a discrete systems can process them. I've already given the example of a discrete system. This discrete system is a biological human being. Many other examples can be sorted out, but here I'm giving a, since because of a limited time, I have given a single example here. So that's all from my end for this today's session. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So very good. So see now, Professor Seema has introduced the whole idea of discrete variable systems. You know, she introduced the idea of making the independent variable discrete. And you know, it's very important to understand this connection. You know, you have continuous variable systems and you have discrete variable systems. And why should we have discrete? She's brought out very nice way. You need to have discrete variable system because you need to use finite storage. And she gave the example, it's a very interesting example of discrete inputs of food to the human body. Very nice. So let us have some discussion on this presentation. Would you like to, comment on this presentation? Yes, Professor Athawale, Professor Prashant Athawale. Yes.
Sir, while giving examples to the students, I feel that we will have to be a bit careful about using the examples, because
Yes.
if it is a RC circuit, or if it is a such man-made systems, maybe we
Yes.
can somehow justify. But
Yes.
when we venture into natural systems,
Yes.
there are so many possibilities of discrete parameters and continuous parameters. So maybe it will be a bit confusing to the students. This is what I
Yes. You're
felt.
right. You're right. In fact, it's very, when you see, it's very important when giving examples that the example precisely conforms to the context. So of course, I agree with you, you have to be careful. So here in this case, and in fact, the human system in that sense is highly non-linear. So in this case, you would think of this as an example of giving discrete inputs. There are discrete points. So, if people eat food at a regular interval, then you could think of this as a case where you could have a discrete independent variable system, which is the food input to a human body. That is fairly accurate. But how that system behaves is an issue. Is that what you're trying to hint at? How that system behaves is not so easy. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Even that, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Go on. Go on.
That.
Yeah. So
I wanted to say that when we are giving,
yeah. Go on. Go on.
misleading sometimes, because the students' perspective is only with respect to some numbers on the very highly developed kind of natural system like human beings. Somewhere I felt that this is because this whole exercise that we are doing is about pedagogy,
Yes.
and it is about the teaching and learning, not the exact course on its
Yes.
core. So it is about teaching and learning this. So while
Yes.
teaching, so what is your take on such
Yes.
example?
I agree with you that while her example of as a discrete sequence is okay, in the sense, this much, you can say how much, what quantity of food was given at discrete instance, that example may be okay. So it's a discrete sequence. But using the human body as a system on which the sequence works is probably too much for a first course,
Yes.
So more appropriate example might be that I sample a speech signal and give it to a computer. Is that right, Professor Athavale? Sample
Yes,
a
yes.
speech signal and give it to a computer. In fact, Professor Marathi has put up some very interesting thoughts in the chat. All of you can see them. So it needs to be specifically clarified. He says it needs to be clarified that continuous systems exist in practice in the form of analog circuits, and therefore they are real. Discrete systems is just an abstraction. Now, discrete systems is not just an abstraction, really, if you think about it. For example, if you look at the salary system in an institution, the salary, so for example, you have a system which, so, there's a function of time, and so if you look at, so let's take the salary sequence first, right? So, you have, so let's say you have an input to a system, the salary system, the salary process in the accounts, and the input is the entire amount which is credited to the salary account of the institution, and the output is a salary of a particular person. Now, this happens only at discrete instance. The salary account is normally not updated every day or at every point in time. So maybe it's updated in the institution maybe once a month or whatever. And then for that particular person also, there's a credit once a month. So discrete time is not necessarily only an abstraction. This is something that we need to bring out.
Sir.
Yes,
Hello?
yes.
No,
yes.
That's right. What the third point what I raised, that
yes.
what we actually implement is digital. And
Yes.
in that context, I say that discrete means we
Oh.
can't implement something which is discrete in time and continuous in amplitude domain. Analog computers would have been there.
Yes. That's a very important observation. That's a very important observation. So, you know, when you have typically systems that are discrete and implemented discrete in time are also discrete in the dependent variable. Is that right, Professor Marathi? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And the discreteness is in both the domains, the independent variable and also the dependent variable. And this is an important point. Yes.
Discrete in independent and continuous in dependent, that could analog computer which did not progress much could have been example which would have been realized but which is not there.
Yes, that's right. So that is discrete, strictly speaking, discrete in time but continuous in value.
Yeah.
Or continuous in the dependent variable.
Yes, sir.
Is not strictly possible.
Okay.
Because you can't have infinite precision.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Any other observations on this? All right. In that case, we'll take the group presentation of group 2 also today.
Excuse me, sir. This is Meenakshi Atre from group 2. Because of some limitations, we could not prepare for the presentation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
2-3 people have some tasks. No, even I was busy. So please pardon.
Doesn't matter. We'll have your presentation tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow definitely we will be prepared in the beginning itself, sir.
Yes. What about group 3? Is group 3 ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can we
very good. Yes. So let's have your presentation.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yes, Professor.
In continuation to the example of a biological system, a human being, again, I would like to ask you, sir, a linear shift, a shift invariant system. For example, I'm delivering this session, say morning at 8 a.m. I will be delivering excellently, but I'm delivering, suppose in the evening, late evening, 8 p.m. Then my performance will not be that good.
Correct.
So this is a shift variant system.
It's a shift variant system. So human beings are highly shift variant.
So can this biological system, this property can be explained with respect to this example?
Certainly. Yeah. So, you know, in fact, human beings can be a very good example of systems which are not additive, not homogeneous, and not shift invariant, you know, in the strict sense. But up to, so you can even use that to illustrate how to a certain extent they are additive, homogeneous, or maybe even shift invariant. So if I ask you a question in the morning and if I ask you a question in the afternoon, you may still respond in a similar way. If I ask you in the middle of the night, you may not respond in the same way, right? To a certain extent, there is shift invariance. So you can definitely use, you know, to show how some partial kind of additivity or homogeneity or shift invariance is there, but not in the true sense. Yes, that's right.
But for the first example, since the human being is a non-linear system,
yes,
that example was specifically for the discrete input and processing of that input.
Yes.
So
that is also fine. Yeah, so in that sense, it could be shown as a good example of a non-linear system acting upon a discrete input.
Okay.
Yeah?
Right. Thank you.
Very nice. Very good. Yes. So now we'll have the presentation by Professor.
Sir, because because actually the human system as the person to person varies. Because we cannot have that system as in such, right? Because all biological and chemical composition.
You can take any one human being as a system.
Right. Yeah. And apply all everything on that particular. Then yes.
Yes. So now Professor Prashant Athole is making his presentation. Yes, Professor. You can start presenting again.
I think I lost the connection.
Oh. You can start again.
Is it visible now?
Yes, it is now. It is.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'm belonging to group 3. We got the topic on impulse response and convolution.
Very nice. Very good.
Yes, sir. Sir, this is what in in the, yes, sir, in the discussions and how to elicit the output from no, it can be represented as a continuous time or discrete time.
Yes.
What I intend.
Yeah, I think you lost your audio in between, Professor. Could you repeat? So while he comes back, there's a question from, there's a question from Professor Ramchandra Reddy. Can you explain stability of continuous and discrete time system without? Well, yes, indeed. In fact, in a subsequent lecture, we are going to explain stability without taking recourse to Laplace and Z transform. So it's coming up in a lecture very soon. And Professor Pai is asking, is it possible to get the recording of these? Since there are so many, yes, we are recording it, and we are going to keep the recording available to you later. Yes, Professor Athole, you can come back.
I am experiencing a lot of
network problems. Doesn't matter. You can continue now.
A lot of instability. H of n is going infinity. Yes, sir. I want to express that this is possible by the looking at the concept of this impulse x convolution h where not mentioned. So
it's not audible, sir.
You're losing your audio in between, Professor.
So that is the practical example of continuous and discrete now, in reality.
These are all problems that we have to deal with in online workshops. We can't avoid. However good, there are always these problems. All right, while Professor Athole joins back, let me make the final assignment of lectures to the groups, right? So, okay, Professor Prashant has joined back. Okay. So, Professor, would you prefer to make your presentation tomorrow then? Maybe we hope that the network may be better tomorrow for you.
So, see, he has lost the contact again. I will inform him.
Yes, yes. So you can just tell him that we'll have his presentation tomorrow.
Okay,
perhaps it's already coming near to.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is now I will start sharing the screen, and I will now assign the remaining lectures to the different groups. Is that right? So that will complete our assignments. Yes, Professor Athole, if we can see you. So can you hear us?
Yes, sir. This system is totally unstable today.
Okay, okay. So let us do one thing. What I suggested, we can have your presentation tomorrow. People might be tired today also. It's later in the evening today. So we'll have your presentation tomorrow. And meanwhile, before we conclude, so, I will want to assign all the remaining lectures to all the groups. So I'll just do that so that, everybody is, as Professor Meenakshi Atre suggested, we'll complete the remaining assignments today. So now I will start presenting. And I have this. Okay, Professor,
Yes,
can you see this? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we have gone up to week 4, isn't it? Now after that, we are going to assign the lectures as follows. So please look. Week 5 has lecture 19, lecture 20, lecture 21. Now these are more difficult. These are more difficult lectures. And then week 6 has lecture 22, 23, which are decomposition of signals and Fourier series decomposition. And week 7 has the Fourier transform and Fourier transform properties. And finally, week 8 has the convolution property and multiplication property and spectral density. And there's a demonstration, isn't it? So we'll go as follows. Group 1 will do lecture 19. Group 2 will do lecture 20. This is in the third cycle. See, second cycle anyway we are now starting. We have already started and we have had one of them. So we'll continue the second cycle first tomorrow. But now I'm talking about the third and last cycle. So in the third and last cycle, group 1 will do lecture 19. Group 2 will do lecture 20. Group 3 will do lecture 21. Group 4 will do lecture 22. Group 5 will do lecture 23. Group 6 will do lecture 24. Group 7, lecture 25. Group 8, lecture 26. Group 9, lecture 27. And group 10 will do lecture 28. Is that fine? So everybody caught this? I'll just repeat. So that is the third and last cycle. So we'll have 3 cycles of presentations. So in the second cycle, of course, we know it was from week 3 and 4. We know which groups are doing what. In the third cycle, weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all taken into our fold, and we are spreading the 10 groups over those 4 weeks in the third cycle. Now, those are more difficult. Those lectures are more difficult. So, it would require a little more preparation. So, Professor Meenakshi Atre has very correctly said that we have assigned the lectures here so that you're well prepared. Is that right? So, is that all right? Is everybody okay with this?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, is that right? So everybody's seen this. So now, we have gone right up to the end of this course, and we know what to do. So we'll modulate our sessions tomorrow accordingly. We'll try to make sure we can do as much as possible by the end of the second session. We'll give you more time. Don't worry for the graded activities. We'll give you more time. But try and do your graded activity in as timely a manner as possible. Because, if you think that you're going to do it later, you are likely not to do it. So you'll get busy with other things. So try and do it in as timely a manner as possible. Yeah, we'll give you more time for the graded activities. Well, then, before we conclude, are there any questions, comments, or any observations or anything that you would like to share for the last few minutes?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
This is Meenakshi Atre.
Yes.
Today we learned a lot of new examples and lot of different point of views to look at the same concepts. So it was very helpful for us. And even the presentation styles also we came to know the pedagogical aspects as it was stressed in the beginning of this session or the workshop. So we are really happy and thankful to you and the team.
I'm very happy that you have enjoyed the workshop and you're gaining from it. Very good. Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other inputs or observations or?
Sir, this is Mridula Kurde. Sir, once again, it's my humble request to you that please extend some of the time for graded activities, because a newcomer person like me has to work hard on all the lectures and then try to understand and then do the activities. So as I can see on the portal that in the activity, 2 and 3, the date is 29, but for 4 it's still 20th and I'm not able to submit it.
We'll give you more time.
So it's just my request.
Yes, no, it is I have taken the request. We will be extending the time, but initially we are keeping it where it is because we want you to make an attempt to do it in time, and then we'll see. We'll give more time. So we'll definitely give more time. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any other?
Yes. Sir, I think that graded 4 is there. It has been wrongly written the timing or what, because 2 and 3 is having on 29 and this particular graded 4 is
no, that has been corrected. No, that has been corrected just now. So earlier 2 and 3 were put earlier, but it has been extended now. So we'll extend group graded activity 4 also. We'll give you more time for grade. But we are first putting the timelines where they are, but we will extend them after you make an attempt to do them on time.
Yes? So how many total graded activities?
See, there are 10 actually. One for each. I explained to you. One for each session, really.
Okay.
Isn't it?
All are 10
sessions. Pardon?
All are on now. I couldn't see. That's why I asked you.
Oh, some of them, all of them are on. Yeah, all of them are on. But no. Some of them may not be on.
First 4 are visible,
first
sir,
4 are
and
visible,
last are not yet
No,
displayed.
because they might not have been made visible as yet because you are going to do them later. So they might have been made visible later.
If they do, we can prepare. That is.
Yeah, fine. So we'll open up. So I think is Urmila there? Urmila? Okay, doesn't matter.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Urmila, you can open up all the graded activities now. There's no problem. You can open up all the graded activities and keep the deadlines as they are. But for the graded activities up to this point, you can extend the deadline. I've already explained to Nitin here. Right? So okay.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions or observations before we conclude? So I hope all of you people are enjoying the workshop and learning. Professor Atre was very kind to give positive comments. Yes.
I think everybody is enjoying this particular one, and a different pedagogy based upon different example style giving. And I actually want to know that we have to explore more on the example, because real-time example and physical significance of everything, whatever we are studying, how it is related to the real time, so that it will be a better understanding to both student as well as we faculty members also, so that we deliberate more and we'll get more idea out of that.
Yes. What I'm contemplating is, I mean, I can see there is a, Professor Smita has put up that, we have a time constraint. That is true. What we will try to do is we will try to have some kind of follow-up work. Anyway, we have one for the new topics next weekend, the next 2 modules, that is on 4th to 7th December. But we'll also try to either repeat this workshop or have a follow-up kind of thing later. Will that be a good idea? Will some of you think that it's a good idea to have a follow-up? At one time, having it for too long is not a good idea, because people can't continue, too much at one time. But we can have small packets, 2 or 3 days at a time, and that can be spread. Is that right? So it can be, we can have follow-up activities. Is that right? So, yes, Professor Nandita, would you like to say something?
Yes, definitely. This follow-up courses will be better.
Yes.
Follow-up courses will be better for a selected module. For selected module, suppose you ask some of us that which module do you want to recapitulate again, or you have, in that case we can propose something and then you can arrange for that. That will be better. And it will also be better. There are some other young faculties in our college, so that we can say that you take part in those modules. If it is you can you have any doubt, you also take part in, so that we can have some other participants also.
Yes, that's a very good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do that. So I can see some of you need to mark your attendance. You can see the chat box. Some people I think are missing from the attendance. So please make sure to mark your attendance. And please, those who have not yet properly registered for the course, please do so on IIT Bombay also, because then you will be able to download the material and use it even in future. Very good. Any other inputs that you wish to give before we close the session? All right, then.
Mark our attendance for each session.
Yes,
okay, thank you.
Yes. Mark your attendance for each session. Yes. All right, so then we'll meet tomorrow morning at 11:30 and we'll continue with the second cycle of presentations. And yes, afterwards, we'll begin with the third and last cycle of presentations. And we'll try and do as many of them as possible tomorrow by the evening. So with that, then, I would then conclude the session and we'll conclude the recording.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.